yeah, we're just waiting for a few more people to show up in the next few minutes. And then I will share a little bit of my lessons and highlights from my retreat that now is almost 3 weeks ago. But then I'm also interested to hear from anybody else who has maybe their one big tip to share if they've run retreats, or if anybody has questions, and then we can just see what kind of conversation we'll create.
Sounds good. Where did you have your retreat? Or am I jumping the gun?
No, not at all. Well, let's get started. It's 2:01. We'll do some impromptu Q&A until a few more people are here, and then I'll probably say it again at the end. But we were just outside of Hamilton at the property of a friend of mine that I actually have a very special connection to, that I've been for the first time 9 years ago. And he has a couple of yurts, and most people were sleeping in tents. And it's like this farmland that is going back to its natural form. So he has like these wetlands put in over the last few years. The fields are growing back to like not being agriculture anymore. And there's all these like butterflies flying around and frogs everywhere, and the animals are coming back. So it's really beautiful.
Nice.
Yeah, just not accessible by public transport, which is one of the lessons that I'll share in a little bit.
Right. Yeah, I'm definitely feeling called to be in a retreat setting. I've been working with a coach for about 2 months now, and we're really trying to dig into like, what is it I actually want? Like, instead of just like all the frivolous stuff, like at the core, like what is it I want? And the only thing that keeps coming up is I want to be working for at least part of the month up north somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, nice.
Like, I don't care what I'm doing or how I'm doing it. I just see me there.
Yeah, that's awesome. I would love to spend more time outside of the city. I noticed that like this retreat that I was leading was for people to get outside of the city and kind of reflect, recharge, connect with nature. The problem was for me running the actual event, I didn't get much of that myself. So I'm planning to get some of that next week. I'm flying to Germany with my wife and my son to visit my family, and we are spending a week with my parents in the Alps. So I'll be turning my phone off for a couple of days and just enjoying the beautiful scenery, going hiking, and reconnecting.
Nice.
Yeah. Hey, Annick, is that how I pronounce your name?
Hi, yes, it's Annick. Yes.
Annick.
Yes. Yeah, I'm sorry, I missed the beginning, so.
We haven't started yet.
Oh,
We're
okay.
just like chit-chatting. I'm just waiting for maybe another minute or two for a few more people to arrive, but I just wanted to say hi.
Yes.
Thanks for reaching out.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for sharing your experience.
So they'll be good.
Yes, you will. And hi, everyone.
Hello.
Actually, for everybody who's here, if you could just type in the chat, like on the bottom, there should be a button that says chat. If you could type in there where you're located, that would be really, really useful, because I think there's a bunch of people in Toronto, but I'm also, Tracy is in Vancouver. Nice. Which is where I will be in November for the very first time. After living in Canada for 11 years, I've never made it to the West Coast, and this year seems to be finally the year that I'm making it over there.
Yeah.
Nice. Hang on, let's see. Awesome. So I think we're going to get started. Just so we get through a couple of my tips, but I also want to make sure that there's enough room for everyone else to share some of their advice or questions. And we can have a little conversation at the end to see how we could support each other, because I think when I was starting to plan my retreat, I reached out to all the people that I knew that had done that successfully. And I asked them a ton of questions. Like I had several conversations that were like hours long, just on me figuring out some of the little details. And some of the tips that I've gotten from them, I would say have contributed to the success of some of the connections that were made or some of the experiences that people had at my retreat. So I'm very happy to share those with you. And what I'll do is I'll share a quick recap on what my retreat actually was. I'll share my like highlights and biggest lessons from my retreat, which I'm hoping will kind of wrap up in like 20 minutes or so. And then if there's any questions that you have in the meantime, feel free to post those in the chat box. And then once I'm gone through like my part, we'll look at the questions, and maybe based on that, we can see if there's anybody who has run retreats before who would like to share some of their top advice, or if there's questions that maybe I can answer or somebody else can answer. We'll talk about that too. And just a quick hello to Brandon and Rainbow. Rainbow actually was part of my retreat. So I'm actually really excited to hear some of your feedback too.
Nice.
But
is it Leroy on the picture? I'm not. It's someone
yeah,
like yeah. So you have like two members of the retreat, no?
No, it's not Leroy.
I'm sorry, it looks like him.
Yeah, so all those photos that I'm showing actually have been taken by this little Polaroid camera. So I'll explain in a little bit why that actually was one of my highlights. So for the next maybe like 15 minutes, just put yourself on mute. And like I said, if you have any questions, you can type those in the chat, and then we'll get to those at the end. Sounds good? Give me a quick thumbs up if you're ready to get started. Awesome. And I can't see everyone on my screen, so I have to flip through. So if there's anything that you want to say, just use the chat box. So that way I'll keep an eye on that. So my retreat, I realized maybe 2 or 3 years ago that all the things that I was creating, all the things I wanted to do for fun, were things that I used to do at summer camp as a kid. And like that to me was this huge aha moment where I'm like, oh, I'm supposed to bring all of these things together. Of like, I was hosting lip sync battles. I was running different workshops. I love taking people out into nature and go camping. I'm like, well, if I put all of these things together, it kind of becomes a summer camp for adults or a retreat or something like that. And I realized that that's one of the things I really wanted to experiment and see if that is worth doing, if people get value from it, if it's something that I can actually run more than once. So last year, I attempted to run exactly this retreat at the same location, just they didn't have the yurts that you see this picture was taken in ready. They actually had a farmhouse that I could rent rooms, and it was a little bit more expensive. And I started setting everything up. I put together my sales page and I shared it with people. I think I sent out one email, and then I didn't get, I got like 3 people applying, but they didn't commit with paying money right away. And then the venue pulled out because they had some like family issues that they needed to take care of. So the thing actually didn't happen. And I was really relieved that it didn't happen, because I think it was like a month before and I had no signups. And I was worried that I'm just going to be losing a lot of money. So we regrouped this year, and here are some of the images that I put out to kind of market the retreat. So I was telling Leroy, the event happened at a little like forest farm property outside of Hamilton. And I know the owner of it. I've been to that property several times in the last like 9 years. And it's this beautiful old forest next to farm fields. And some of the farm fields have now turned into these wetlands that you can see with like the Muskoka chairs around. You can actually swim in one of them. They have these campfire pits. Like, it's a beautiful place that I wanted to host it at. And the 3 kind of main ingredients of the retreat were reconnect with nature, because I feel like living in the city, we don't get enough time to be around trees, to be around flowers, to just breathe in the fresh air. And it always slows me down when I spend time in nature. So I wanted to have that experience for other people. And then the second part is connecting with yourself. And the third one is connecting with each other. And with those three things in mind, plus my three main values are adventure, community, and growth. I'm like, these are like the basic basic building blocks that I wanted to use to create the content, the programming for the event for. But this is all that I had written about. Like I wrote the sales page last year, didn't really change much for this year, and didn't create any of the programming until maybe like a week before. Aside from a few key things that I knew I was going to do, I didn't really commit to like the programming way in advance. It was more, okay, now I need to sit down. I have people that are committed. I need to figure out what to do. So I'm usually not I like to plan in advance, but not all the details. So this is just a reminder of, yeah, what I put out as marketing messages. And I'll share in a little bit now my highlights and lessons. And then if you have run a retreat yourself, I would love to know if you have one top tip that I haven't mentioned yet at the end that you could share with the group. And we'll keep it to one just so everybody gets a voice and everybody has an opportunity to share something that they've learned. And then at the end, we'll open it up for questions. So just, I'll say one more time, if you have any questions, just type those in the chat box and then we'll get to it kind of at the end. All right, so I'll share some of my highlights first. And I would say those were the things, kind of seeing them as the lessons of things that I did that worked really well. And then in the second part, I'll go over the lessons of things that didn't go well and I might want to improve in the future. So the first thing is, as people arrived, and that was a little adventure in itself, because I didn't include transportation. So to get to the place, you either need a car, or I said, we can arrange you to be picked up at a GO station near Hamilton, and then we'll drive you there. And that's something that the venue had offered to me, but the problem was their van broke down just 2 weeks before the retreat, and then they ended up selling it and not being able to get a new one. So there was no transportation figured out. So I had everybody, and out of all the people that attended, which were, so in total, I had 6 people who were attendees for the retreat. I had 3 facilitators and me, so we were 10 people in total. And out of the 6 people, only 1 person was driving, and she was arriving late because she had to finish work. So 5 people actually ended up taking the GO train. And for them, and I'll explain a little bit more what I did in my lessons of things that didn't go so well about how that went. But the one thing that was beautiful is, as soon as they arrived at the property, I had their luggage taken to the campsites, and then they had to enter the forest from the parking lot and go on this little walk. And at the entrance of the forest, I put a little sign that said, follow the arrows. And I created all these arrows made out of sticks that I put on the path, and led them kind of along this path. In the middle or halfway point, I had a card that said, pick an intention card to set your intention for the weekend. And I added this box of cards that were about, from the book, The 4 Agreements, if anybody's familiar with it. And then they arrived at the yurt once they continued. And once they arrived, I asked them, so did you notice anything? And not a single person noticed the arrows on the floor. And when they were reading their intention cards, they were standing in front of this little creek. And on the other side of the creek, there was this huge, magnificent tree with a face carved inside the tree, which is the wood spirit. And if you were standing there and you just looked straight, you would totally see it. And none of them saw the arrows, none of them saw the wood spirit. And to me, that was like the first lesson of paying attention to those small little details. Like when you arrive from the city and you arrive in a forest, and my weekend was all about reconnecting with nature, you have to slow down your pace and you start to pay attention to all these little things. And I oftentimes, and I explained it at the retreat, for me, it's like stepping off a treadmill when you arrive from the city and you arrive in nature, or I think any type of retreat where the pace is a lot slower, people need some time to adjust to that pace. And for me, that little walk was a perfect lesson of showing people, hey, there's more around you, more magic around you if you pay attention. And from then on, I think people started to pay more attention to those little details. So that was a good little lesson. Yeah, the other thing we did is, and I actually can show you the original. And I got this tip 2 days before the retreat from another facilitator that runs a lot of retreats. She calls it a hand contract. I'm just going to show it in my camera, but it basically is one big piece of paper, and everybody put their hands on the paper in the middle of the circle and makes an outline around their hands. I know it's a little bit hard to see in the picture. And then in each finger, they wrote one quality or one talent or something they wanted to bring, one intention that they wanted to bring to the weekend. So people wrote things like insight, growth, connection, hope, empathy, ahas, connection, laughter, big smiles, love, freedom, self-expression, friendship. So there are a lot of different things that people brought. And then in the palm of their hands, they had to write something that might hold them back from bringing that to the weekend. So people wrote things like pride, or being too cautious, or hesitation, fear of being vulnerable. And I shared one of the things too, which is trying to control the weekend too much in terms of the schedule. So we all shared these vulnerable things pretty much right at the beginning. And then in the middle, once we all went around the circle and shared those, in the middle, we wrote all the things that we will need, what each person needs from the group to be able to overcome the one thing that is holding them back. And this has kind of become the community agreements that we lived by for the weekend. So things that were collected in the middle were patience, support, acknowledgement, listening, non-judgmental space, openness, going with the flow, a little push in the butt, letting people speak, not giving advice. So all these things we kind of co-created, rather than me saying, here's the rules that we're going to live by. We co-created them together. And I think that was another beautiful thing to start this experience and have everybody on the same page. And the other thing what we did is we created phone sleeping bags, which I was going to find one, but then I couldn't because I think I already packed it away somewhere. I basically had these little envelopes that would fit people's phone, as it was a digital detox weekend. So everybody put their phones in there. And on the outside, you could draw a little sleeping bag with your phone, or just make it creative with stickers. And that was a little activity we did right at the beginning. So we checked in and said, well, yeah, I'm going to leave. And I had a wax seal that I bought also on Amazon 2 days before, and everybody put like a wax seal on the envelope, which was kind of a nice little physical thing to yeah, close off your phone for the weekend. Yeah, that's number 2. Number 3 is and those are all things that I basically figured out. Like all these 3 things that I've mentioned so far were things I came up with in the week before the retreat, and I'm definitely going to do again next time. So I gave everyone a little custom journal, because some of the activities I knew will require us to journal or take notes. And instead of just giving them like a random journal, I ended up looking up a quote that I hand wrote on the front of each journal that was based on what people filled out in their registration survey. So I tried to figure out, okay, what's a quote that would resonate with that person? And then I wrote that on each journal, and I handed that to them. And that also led to a little activity where people shared a story that they remembered or that came up for them when they read their quote. So another quick way to have people connect with each other. And a bunch of people actually use them quite a lot. So that's also something they can take home with them and remember, I guess, the weekend and the experience. The next thing is I had guest facilitators, and Rainbow, who's on the call, actually was one of them. And bringing the guest facilitators and not trying to do everything myself, I think was one of the smartest things I could have done to not burn out on the weekend, because this meant I was actually able to participate in activities. And even one of the participants said that she enjoyed really getting to know me because I was able to participate, not just facilitate the whole weekend. And it also allowed me to bring a lot of different skills to the weekend. So we had one person, Lewis from Fundamentals of Play, who did an improv workshop that helped us overcome our barriers. And we did a lot of debriefing afterwards, like how does what you just learned in the game apply to your life or to the weekend? And I think that was really powerful. Then my friend Kuhn Hua, he led a meditation class, and we actually did a little barefoot hike in the forest and then sat near the wood spirit and did some mindfulness meditation. And then Rainbow led this amazing dance class with a bunch of props, which turned out into a herd of unicorns dancing through the forest with bubbles and glitter and all kinds of things. So we had, in my opinion, the right mix of, like, the improv was still playful and very easy for people to get into, but there was a very, I guess, deeper meaning behind it. And then the meditation was the opposite. It was very grounded energy rather than the high energy from the improv. And then we had something physical with the dancing and kind of running around the forest. And I think all these three elements have really helped kind of create different transformations and mini aha moments for the people who were attending. So yeah, I definitely am not, I'm always going to bring other people on board just to help me do that. And the last highlight, which I already mentioned, it was a digital detox. And so nobody had their phones, nobody had their watches. I was the only one who had a watch to keep time and keep us on track, which was my biggest challenge. And then I got this Polaroid camera, and I basically said, everybody is allowed to take 3 photos, capture 3 moments throughout the weekend, because we only have very limited amount of film. And that led to just these interesting moments being captured and people getting a little bit more creative. Like on the right, one person, he got lost when we were like doing a journaling activity in the forest, and then he was found again. So there was one picture of when he got lost and one picture of when he was found. And people just grabbed the camera and captured something. And now, if you can see my picture, I have, like, we basically created this wall of memories at the weekend where people posted their Polaroids with a little caption. And now I have this board with all the pictures as kind of like a memory above my desk. Whoa, let me just make sure that that's not coming down. Yeah, so those, I think, were some of the highlights from the weekend, the things that I definitely would do again. And now I'll share my lessons, the things that didn't go so well that definitely could be improved. And I'll start with the first one, which comes with the challenge of nobody having a watch, nobody knowing what time it is, and me trying to keep people on track. The schedule actually was very organic. Like, a lot of times I figured out what to do next only after we finished the previous activity or content, and just moved things around, and it kind of worked out. I skipped a few things that I had prepared, but the one thing that I would include is creating more rituals, especially a ritual, let's say, before and after each meal, because that's a great opportunity to bring people together and a lot of times, especially around breakfast, it was hard to even have everybody there at the same time, because I had to run with a bell all the way down to the tents where the campground was to wake people up. And then oftentimes I have to do a second round because people didn't get up at the first one. And then some people went for a swim in the morning and other people went to go for a little hike. So we were all a little bit spread out. And I think it would have worked really well if we had a ritual or something. This is what we're going to do before each meal, and everybody needs to be present for it. And the same thing before people get up. After each meal, we'll have another type of ritual, which also allows me to share kind of what's happening next, rather than having to find everyone afterwards, which sometimes happened. People arrived early for breakfast, already left, and people arrived late, were still at the greenhouse where we had dinner, and it was hard for me to arrange that. And thinking of rituals, I probably also would include one type of quick activity that maybe is only like 5 to 10 minutes before each content block that will help people connect with each other more. And I had some of those, but they were kind of sporadic, kind of spliced in between. But I think if there is no, like people don't know what time it is, those rituals would have helped add a little bit more to the structure. And talking about structure, the second thing is actually very related, which is more time for debriefs and also more time for more vulnerable activities. And I knew from the beginning that I probably put in way too much into the programming that I wanted to do. So sometimes the time was just running out to do an extra debrief and maybe add another half hour or even an hour after an activity that maybe was quite transformational or impactful, to have people debrief and share with each other what the takeaways were. So I would definitely add more time into the schedule, have less content, have it more experiential. And yeah, even for me, for myself, I think I would probably arrive a day before everyone arrives and stay an extra day, so I can do some more preparation and really kind of getting in the zone before people arrive, because this time I think I had 45 minutes and I was running around putting the arrows in the path and putting the signs, and it was a little bit crazy. And the same thing at the end, I would like to take some time to do a proper debrief after everybody has left without feeling rushed of having to pack up and driving back to the city the same day. So there seems to be like definitely like our retreat was people arrived Friday afternoon and left on Sunday after lunch. And I think after asking people, most people would have been available on Thursday evening. So I could have had an extra day. And that's what I'm considering for the next one, is just add an extra day to it. Number 3. So this was maybe my biggest mistake, my biggest failure, if you want to call it, from the retreat, which is carefully read the agreements with the venue. There were 2 big things that I missed. The first one was I missed that we had the venue booked on the Friday from 5 p.m. And I was under the impression that we would have the venue just from the morning. So when I first had arranged people's GO train schedule to get to the venue, I told them to meet at 1 p.m. and then they would arrive by 3. And then I realized they can't actually be there that early. I need to push that back. So what I ended up doing is I got a little bit I found a creative solution, let's put it that way. And that was I organized a little scavenger hunt for people at Union Station before they left. So for the first hour after they met, I actually had them meet up in 2 different groups of, I think, 3 people each. And then I gave them a couple of challenges to talk to strangers, which at least I knew you would enjoy. I had them talk to strangers and do an Ask Deep Questions bingo. So they had this bingo sheet with 9 questions that they had to ask strangers at the train station before they left. And then at a certain time, they had to open a second envelope that would give them the directions on how to get on the train. And luckily, Rainbow was actually there with them as one of my facilitators to make sure that everybody arrives and everybody gets on the train and we're not leaving anyone behind. But I thought that was like a a fun way to make this this mishap of me not reading the time right and turn it into something that starts the experience for people before they even leave the city. So maybe that's something I even do on purpose next time. But the other thing I misread in the agreement was I miscalculated. So I had my budget figured out, and a week before, 5 days before the retreat, I was super happy because I was at the break-even point. And then I reread some of the agreement and I had to pay the second half of the deposit. And I realized that for the camping fees, it was, originally I thought it was per tent, but it was per person. And it was not per weekend, it was per night. So it ended up being a lot more expensive than I thought. And I ended up losing money with the retreat. And that, I think, is that my next, yeah, that's my next lesson. So my retreat was not profitable. I lost about $500 in the end. And I'm more than happy to share some of the numbers behind it if anybody's interested. But for me, the big challenge was once I realized that I was losing money before the retreat was happening, and I did have those 6 people signed up, I was really upset. Like, it took me a long time to get out of this funk and think of, oh, I wanted to run this retreat, but I would have liked to make some money with it, not just do it for charity. And I ended up trying to reach out to a few more people personally and see if they would be available. And I ended up getting a lot of no's from people, which didn't really help in that time. Like, they just couldn't figure out their schedules and make it happen. But then with the help of some people in my mastermind group and some of friends that I talked to, they helped me reframe it. And it's not, I'm not losing money, which was totally like a scarcity thinking, to I'm investing this money into building these brand ambassadors. Because if I focus on the people that did pay money to be there and that did invest and that did resonate with my messaging that I put out and create the best experience for them, then they will become the ambassadors for this, the testimonials that I will get afterwards that will help me fill the next retreat or even like offer something else afterwards. So they helped me switch that. And I think I also decided on like the last day that instead of trying to cut costs everywhere and maybe spend less money on the food to make, to lose a little bit less money from the weekend, I decided to, you know what, I'm just gonna spend the same money as I would if I had 2 extra people showing up. And that way, at the end, I can say that I gave people the best experience possible. I have a budget that is real, based on the numbers that I actually would have spent if I had more people. And yeah, I think it was the best decision to make. Like, that's a time where I decided, you know what, I am gonna spend money and get these little journals. You know what, I am gonna get a Polaroid camera. And those now, like looking back, were some of the highlights for me, at least, that I think contributed to the whole experience. And one last tip that I can share after chatting with more people about this even the week before is, if you're planning to run a retreat, you do want to start marketing it maybe 5-6 months ahead of time, especially if there's some travel involved, especially if people have to take time off work. If it's not just a Saturday, Sunday thing, the more time you have to market, the more likely you are to find people that are available. And there's always going to be people that will pull the trigger early and people who will get their ticket last minute. But it will just give me and you probably a little bit more security in knowing that this is actually happening. And the best tip I've actually gotten from somebody else is reach out to people personally after you have the venue date and the venue and the date confirmed, and have them commit and pay money. Like, have at least like 3, depending on how many people you fit in your retreat, but maybe like 3 to 5 people commit and pay you money before you even announce it to everybody else. Because that way you can just go in with a lot less anxiety about having to fill the retreat and having to market everything. And a lot of times it's easier to have these one-on-one conversations to get people to commit. Yes, and my last one is this really depends on what you're planning to do with the retreat. And I was in this moment before the retreat where I wasn't sure, where I knew that I'm not going to be making money. I was thinking, well, that means I should offer something else that I'm selling at the retreat to get back some of that money later. If it is a coaching program or a product or a mastermind or anything else that I could offer afterwards. And what I realized is that I just waited way too long to introduce anything. So I didn't end up making any offer. And I talked to somebody else and they said, if you want to offer something, the best time to do it is the evening before your last day, before people depart. So let's say the retreat was Friday to Saturday. I could have made an offer of something Saturday after dinner. And then Sunday, I could just focus on the closing ceremony. I don't have to think about, oh, this is now a bad time to like sell something. Although it's not really about selling something necessarily. It's just offering like a next step if people want to continue working with you or continue having different or the same type of experiences. So if I was going to do this again, I would have to like seed the offer and just mention it several times through the weekend and make the last call, the last actually mention of it the day before the last day. So the last day is completely focused on giving people the best experience, having a nice closing ceremony and wrapping it up and making everyone feel good. Yeah, those were some of the lessons. I probably have lots more to share. But I'm really interested to also see if there's anybody else here who has run a retreat or participated in a retreat that would like to share a lesson. And if you have any questions right now, also would be a good time to start typing them in the chat box so we can maybe go to some questions. And or if there's anybody who wants to share something, either maybe let me stop the share so I can see everyone in one screen. If you're on there with video, you can just raise your hand if you want to share something. Or if you're in the chat or without your video on, you can just type something in the chat box and then I'll just select who will share. And I see Anik, do you want to share something?
Yeah.
I know you've run a retreat last year and you're about to run another one next month. So I'm excited to hear your thoughts.
Yes, what you shared is just amazing. Thank you so much. It's so valuable information. Definitely gonna reflect on that for my second edition. So I'm also used to organizing big live events in my previous work. And one thing that I'm super happy I did at my first retreat, even though I had no intention necessarily of doing more retreats, but I was like, you know what, since I'm already doing it in my work, I might as well do it in case. So it's, I asked people to sign a video and photo release before coming, and then we did testimonials on videos, and we took pictures. So now I can use that freely without kind of like worrying about would they agree, like how they would feel, like they were already aware and good with that. And one thing I also did is send a survey after the retreat to ask them a written testimonial and things to improve, what worked well and what what things we could improve. And that was also pretty good to kind of like have their feedback and also written testimonial. Always nice. Some people are shy with the video, so they prefer written. So it was good to have both.
Yeah, that's nice to offer both. And I think that that's also one thing that I didn't include in this list, but I'm definitely going to do. And I had the challenge of it being like a tech-free weekend. So I did have actually my photo camera with me, but I decided to not even use it and just stick with a Polaroid. But I think after the closing ceremony, once people are packed up or packing up, I think next time I would take my camera and get some video testimonials from people, because that's the time where it's the freshest and they remember it the most.
Yeah.
And they're still in that good
yeah,
feeling.
and they can feel the energy or like, yeah.
Yeah, that's a great tip. Thank you. Anybody else? Tracy?
Hi. Thanks so much, first of all, for offering this. I don't really know you, but Blake introduced us on Facebook.
Yes.
And yeah, I really appreciate your transparency and openness with what you're sharing. It's really, really nice. I've not run a retreat. I've been toying around with the idea for a long time. I will at some point. But I took part in a 10-month leadership program that had 4-week-long retreats. So I learned a lot from what they did. And I just wanted to offer something, potentially a solution to what you were saying about, you know, getting people out of bed in the morning and on time and that sort of thing. What they did is they because it was a leadership program, right? We were basically asked to become leaders to help run the retreat while we were there throughout the various weeks. And so people would volunteer to be part of different groups that would be responsible for different things. One of them was the timekeepers. So before I mean, they would need to have then a watch in this instance, right? So like a group of 3 or 4 people would have to recruit everybody for breakfast, you know, lunch, etc. Right? You know, we had like a drum and whatever. People made it fun. Sometimes people were playing music, like whatever. It was just like up to whatever group to decide how to get creative to get people there on time. And it was also also an agreement for people to, you know, respect that and show up on time, right? To not waste people's time. And then we also had a group called Beauty and Order. So these were the people that were responsible for like arranging the rooms, making it really pretty, you know, taking stuff away. And that was just nice. We just all had there's another group too. I just can't remember right now. So just some ideas in terms of how to make the flow go more easily without you feeling you need to do it all yourself.
Yeah, well, this is great. I actually had one person volunteer and wake people up the first day. Just sometimes people have they sleep either like a stone or like a feather. You need sometimes 1 wake-up call, sometimes you need 3, with one actually going to the tent and saying, hey, I'm gonna wait here until you're dressed. But I like the idea of almost making it a challenge and maybe giving people different tasks. Like one of the other things that might have been a little bit challenging for us was we had to wash dishes because we were completely off the grid. So we didn't have necessarily like running water. Yeah, washing dishes was another thing that actually one of my best memories was washing dishes with a couple of people late at night. But I think if I do it again, I might I might actually set up, this is what each person or each group is responsible for at what time during the weekend. And then give them the challenge of making it fun. But Rainbow, you wanted to share something on that.
Yeah, I just want to share from my experience of being one of the people that like slept in a little bit. I totally hear what you're saying, Tracy, and I think it makes a lot of sense. And I think one thing I did appreciate is Jan did kind of tell people, this is kind of the intention we have, but if you really feel like you want to go take a nap, so really giving people that freedom, because I find like sometimes we don't get that even in the city, right? A lot of people are coming from 9 to 5, so they really, if they want to sleep in, I think that's great, but not for it. I totally get not for it to have an impact on the schedule or everyone else, because we want to respect everyone's time. So I'm thinking, yeah, what would have been good is maybe having a time frame and then telling people the impact of, if we aren't like giving them personal freedom, but saying there's other fun activities and we won't be able to get to all of them if, we're not all done breakfast by this time, right? Meaning they can come whenever they want because everyone takes different amounts of time to eat. Like I'm a slow eater, right? So I need like a half an hour. Some people need like 10 minutes. So I think that would be good. And just say you want to be done breakfast by 9 a.m. or something, right? Whatever it is.
That was exactly my challenge, because originally I had thought, okay, so breakfast will be from like 8 until 9 a.m. and then at 9:30 we'll start. And that means people, they have an hour for breakfast and then they have half an hour to get ready.
Yeah.
But the problem, nobody had a watch and I couldn't. And it was hard for myself. So I think that there is something about, I even was thinking one of the solutions would be having one other person be just responsible for time rather
Yeah, one
than
person.
me, right?
Yeah.
And it could be a different person every day. Yeah, because even because of the way the property was laid out to kind of share with everyone else, I would run around with a bell, or like we have this beautiful gong and like different instruments that we used. When I would start, I would give people 15 minutes. By the time I got to the last person, they had 5 minutes left, and then I felt bad because now they need to rush. So I gave them 15 minutes, which meant the first people were like there, and then they left again because they were early. So just for me to figure that out took a little bit of time. Just, yeah, because of the way the property was. But yeah, giving people like, hey, you have 15 minutes or half an hour, and having a bit more of the rituals, like you always have breakfast and then there's going to be free time for that long. Like if people know that, then they can plan for that, even if they know they're going to be late for breakfast.
Yeah.
They know that a little bit extra time, or no, this is the time that will start like right after breakfast. So they know that they want to be there for that. They need to be there for breakfast on time.
Yeah, and I totally think, Tracy, what you said would have been great. It's just like you said, having one person, because the tents were down below, and then we have the yurts above. So then having one person on the tent level, that one person has a watch, the timekeeper for the day or for the weekend, and then they can do like one gong for like, that's first call, right, for getting up, and then like 2 gongs is like a snooze button, right? Like whatever, a snooze button, something like that. But I think, yeah, collaboration, Tracy, of what you're saying and kind of what you did, I think can make it even better. Because I really didn't have an idea fully of like when I was, like I heard what you said, but I wasn't really as present to it. So I think, yeah. And then thinking about logistics too, because there was only one shower, which at one point I had to wait for, like that impacted, right? So just working out the logistics ahead of time, having like a shower schedule or something, is what we did with, because I did Vipassana, we had a shower schedule because you needed one, right, to make things work. And so it's like calm. Anyways, that's how.
Yeah, like a sign-up sheet. That's actually a really good idea.
Yeah.
And now it also made me think of the timekeeper, like to make it more fun and interesting. I'll find a super old, like wind up pocket watch with like the chain, and we're still tech free. Like you don't have to be a timekeeper and have your phone or like a Fitbit or something.
Yeah.
It could be something that is really interesting and kind of unique.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there anybody else on the call that wants to share something, or we can also go into some questions if anybody has one? Who here is, like, from the people that are just listening, maybe you can use the chat and tell us if you're planning to run a retreat, or if you've run a retreat already, just so we know. But Anik, did you have another like question or share?
I had a question, mostly was maybe 2, but the first one is, would you mind sharing maybe the rate of your retreat? And it was what, 2 days or 3 days?
So it was Friday to Sunday.
Okay.
And the cost was, so I ended up selling like private tent and single tents, which ended up also being interesting because of the genders. We ended up having 2 people that paid for a shared tent get a single tent. So next time, I think what I will do is I will just give everyone a single tent, because it also didn't impact the price as much as I did on my end. But we did sell, let me actually look it up, what I put. The single tent was 800 and the shared one was 650 Canadian. I think.
Sorry, can you repeat that? So the private.
800 for the private and 650 for the.
Oh yeah, for the 2 nights. 2 nights, 3 days. Okay, thank you.
2 nights, 3 days, and maybe I can quickly share also in terms of food. I had the lunches catered, and breakfast and dinners we actually prepared ourselves, which was a little bit challenging with various dietary restrictions, which is also something that makes things more interesting. So the lunches that I catered were actually like completely like dietary and allergy friendly. So there was like gluten-free, dairy-free, vegan, like all of it. So that made it very easy. And I picked those up on the Friday, and then they were just refrigerated. There were these healthy bowls with different like grains and zucchini pasta and burrito bowls and like Buddha bowls and those things. And they were actually a great hit. And then for dinner, the first day we made, my wife, who also runs a food business, she prepared taco, all the taco ingredients for us, and then people just prepared their own tacos. And Saturday night, I had people pair up in groups, and everybody prepared a part of a meal. So we made a chili, we roasted some corn and sweet potatoes and salad. And then I had one team on dessert duty, but nobody was, I think almost nobody had dessert because people ate so much for the main meal. I think more people ate dessert for breakfast the next morning. Yeah, and now you're saying you would like to plan or co-facilitate retreats in the future. What do you mean by co-facilitate? Like, are you looking for somebody else to run it with, or just want to go and facilitate at somebody's retreat, like the people that I kind of brought in? Let me know. Yes, Tracy.
I just thought of something else to offer. I have tons of questions, but I think I'd take forever with those. So in the retreat that I attended before, they always have something called assistants. So it's actually people that are in the back of the room. There's usually 2 of them. This is for a group of like 20, 25 people. So maybe just be 1 if there was a smaller group or whatever. And those are people that are interested in running retreats and learning how it works. So like they're part of the planning sessions at the beginning. They're part of the debriefing at the end. They can give feedback throughout. They have a different vantage point of the room to see what's going on. And they're holding the space, and they're introduced. You know, people know that that's what their job is. They're not co-facilitating, you know, they want to support the process. So that might be something to keep in mind. Like I would love to have that when I run a retreat, just somebody who might be interested in doing it in the future and just really want to support the process and learn from it. So an idea.
Yeah, I think that's great. Planning retreats, I just see Andel replying. We can't hear you, I guess. Facilitate workshops on mind, body, helping people find well-being through nature and inspire them to live fulfilling lives as best authentic self. And co-facilitating means planning retreats with other facilitators. Yeah, I don't know what your question is. Like, are you trying to find other facilitators, or like what's stopping you from, let's say, coming up with an idea and putting it out there? Because I think for me, I'm often just when I have an idea, I just put it out there and see what the feedback is. A lot of times I just share something on social media, or I send out an email or have conversations with people. Hey, would you be interested in something like this? And once I kind of get some interest, I take it to the next step. And like I start for this one, for me, the biggest challenge was finding the venue. And I really wanted to make something happen at that specific venue, but I also know that there's probably other venues that might be a little bit, like they're just starting to work with retreats. Until last year, they haven't run any. So they only started in the last year. And the maximum amount of people they can have in their space, I think, is 18. So it's kind of limited depending on what you want to create. And for me, I was like, 18 seems like a good number. I didn't want to have more than 20 in general. But yeah, finding the right venue is, I think, that just not only has the right amenities that are important to you, but also feels right. And I had that from another friend of mine who runs a summer camp for around fitness. It's called Camp Fuel, where people work out. So she has a bunch of trainers there who run fitness classes, but it's in Muskoka at a summer camp. So there's also like paddleboarding and jumping into the lake and campfires and all of that. And for her, finding the right venue was mostly because of the staff. So she has this amazing relationship with the staff that just go all out on helping her make this experience great. And they're the only adult group that are on the property. Aside from that, they're dealing with kids all the time. So they're like super excited to do some adult activities with the group. And for me, that was the same thing. Like having the relationship with the owner of the property made things a lot easier. All right, and I was offering if anybody needs help to co-facilitate retreats, planning, logistics, marketing, to get in touch with her. Is, by the way, everybody here in the Deep Connectors Facebook group? I think all of you have joined that. So feel free afterwards to reach out to some of the people that you see here if you want to connect and yeah.
I have one question regarding your deck. I've seen that you're kind of like putting together like something for facilitators. Do you know when it would be ready, or is there like a way to get one already without like waiting?
So what I have right now is, and I don't know, Tracy, if you've seen this yet, is my Ask the Questions deck. And this is actually what started this whole, like this retreat basically started with me facilitating a camping trip 2 years ago. And I took a couple of people, it was 7 of us, to the backcountry in Algonquin Park, just a few hours north of Toronto. And I wrote a bunch of questions on cards to have people connect with each other in the car ride, those 3-4 hours going up. And then they loved it so much that I turned it into this deck of cards that has 3 different levels of questions, from curious questions to brave questions and then vulnerable questions. And I use those now at all of my events. I had them around at the weekend as well. I didn't use them as much as I originally had planned to because there were so many other things that I wanted to do. But this deck has 48 questions and works really well for like a smaller group. I use them a lot around like dinner conversations, for example. And what I'm creating is, this is the prototype of a facilitator kit. So this would be basically 3 times the size. It would have 150 cards, still in the 3 different categories. If I can pull it out in my prototype. So you will still have like the curious, brave, and vulnerable cards. And I'm also putting together a guidebook with different activity ideas on how to use the cards. Let's say if you're running a retreat or a networking event or a coaching group. But where I'm at in the process is I have to send the designs for a prototype to my printer, which probably will happen not until October, I think. And then I am going to do another Kickstarter campaign to get this out to like raise the money for the production. Originally, I was planning to do that in the fall, but just things take a little bit longer. And I think I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it before the end of the year, just because I need to see how the prototype looks like. And then depending on that, we'll have to do some changes. But I will be sharing in the Deep Connectors Facebook group and through some emails, some of the content beforehand. And to answer some of those questions.
So is that like a way to get it online? The first one, the first deck?
So this one you can order online. You can go to askdeepquestions.com.
Okay.
And then order it and I ship it out. Or if you're in Toronto, there's like one location where you can pick it up for free if you don't want to pay for shipping.
Okay.
And
yeah,
that will probably be great for your retreat in October, depending on how you want to use it. But I will post some more like activity in the Facebook group as well.
One thing I'm also exploring is like kind of like I'm putting together like a goodie bag, and I would want to use it in the retreat, but also maybe depending on price point and if there is like a way to have a bundle, kind of like get one for each participant as well.
Yeah,
but I'm
so-
going to look on your website and find out more.
Yeah, actually, if anybody's interested, I started putting together a like basically wholesale pricing. So if you're interested in like getting a couple and then selling them to people or giving them away, we can definitely chat.
Okay.
So yeah, please reach out.
Yeah, amazing. Thanks.
Awesome. It's 3 o'clock, so I think we'll cap it there unless there's one more question and we maybe do one more. But yeah, if anybody's interested to chat more about like the retreats and all of that, maybe just post something in the Facebook group. And that way we can all continue the conversation. Let's say if you have a question or you have another piece of advice. And I'll also send out the replay to this to a few people that couldn't be here. So maybe they will join the conversation after. Awesome. Thanks so much for spending an hour with me, and I hope that there was something useful. And I look forward to seeing you in the Facebook group. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Bye.
You're very welcome. Bye.
Thank you, Jan.